This is a Hot Pie Original.
Mark McKinnon was a political and media advisor to 2 successful campaigns for governor, 5 successful presidential primary and general election campaigns, including former President George W. Bush. He writes for the Daily Beast. He's consulted on the Netflix series House of Cards, and he is currently the co-creator, co-producer, and co-host of an excellent series on Showtime entitled The Circus Inside the Greatest Political Show on Earth. Of course, I like to add every time that his greatest accomplishment is being editor of The Daily Texan, the student newspaper for the University of Texas. Good to see you after all these years of talking to you.
Yeah. Here you are.
I look like Shrek. I know. Face for radio. We do this all the time, and I couldn't help it. I meant to pull the soundbite. Of course, it had to happen. Shockingly, Donald Trump is on with Sean Hannity, the great journalist that is Sean Hannity. And, of course, in their infomercial, Hannity says, doesn't ask questions, just sort of sets them up, as you know, says, "So are you going to run?" Trump doesn't say no by any stretch. In fact, he gives a nonsensical response that makes you think that he is going to run and says something to the effect, "I'm certainly considering it." Then he said, "For legal reasons, I can't completely answer that yet," which you can explain whatever legal reason that is. Bottom line is, he didn't say no. What's your takeaway?
Well, Donald Trump knows that there's no greater way to get it. Well, first of all, the thing that Donald Trump needs more than anything is simply attention. He wants to be the center stage all the time, 24/7. And that's why he ran for president initially. He had no notion that he was going to be president. In fact, if he knew that he was actually going to be president, given the legal liabilities he now faces, he may not have even run.
Right.
And in fact, we know from our own reporting that his intention was to run, get a bunch of attention, then ultimately endorse Chris Christie for president. And then he just kept knocking him down, and next thing you knew, he was president. So he understands media very well, and he knows that they're going to obsess about him and can't give him up because he's great for clicks, and that his power evaporates the second that anybody thinks he's not running for president. So he's going to say that he's running or give the impression that he's running or that he's thinking about running right up until the very second that he doesn't. And the reality is that there are lots of reasons why he won't or couldn't. Legally, there are lots of legal.
Yeah, well, what is that? I mean, I know, there's a whole science, a screwed up science. Probably have to drop acid to figure it out. But what do you make of that comment? I mean, it's pretty rare that Trump would even have it on his mind to correct himself and say, "Well, for legal reasons, I can't." What does that even mean? What does it literally mean? And what do you think he was thinking on that?
I don't know. I mean, it's sort of like he just throws out it's like his taxes; they're being audited. It's
Right.
just, he was kind of floundering, I think, to find a rationale to say why he couldn't. But I think that was kind of like a tell that the legal liabilities are really buried deep in his head right now and kind of messing with his head, that he would even say out loud that there could be legal obstacles.
But I'll take the bait. We all have to take the bait. So what are the odds of Biden? I mean, I think there's more to this than just Trump. What are the odds of Biden v. Trump Part 2?
I think unlikely. And I'll take the first one. I think it's in some ways even more unlikely that it'd be Biden. I think that Biden, again, like Trump, he has to say he's running.
Why?
Because
he did say he's running. He did say it. In fact, it may have been, you'll know this better than me, it may have been his first, remember all the criticism, I think justified, frankly, but the criticism was, you haven't done a press conference. He does a press conference, and in the context of the press conference, he says, "I fully expect to run again."
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because he wants to knock that down. The second you say you're not running, you become a lame duck president and you lose leverage. So again, Biden will say that he's running right up until the second that he doesn't. But I think, practically speaking, well, listen, it's hard for anybody to sort of like give up the greatest platform on the planet. But I think that Biden will recognize that, he has achieved his life's goal, that he's done a lot, and that the way that he could really be a transformational president would be the guy that hands the baton to the first African-American woman who could be president of the United States. And I think, that Harris is in a catbird seat to take the baton and push it forward. So, and Biden's going to be 80 plus, what would it be, 82, I think?
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense, just for his legacy's sake. If I were Jill Biden or, any of his advisors, I'd say, listen, you rang the bell, you did everything you set out to do. Now you can really preserve your legacy and burnish it by helping elect the first woman.
You think it's more likely it's Trump v. Harris than it is Biden v. Trump?
Yeah, but I think it's going to be Harris v. somebody else. I think that Trump. Well, I don't know. I just think that I do think the legal obstacles are going to be real. I think that he's going to be tied up, kind of like, who was the towering giant that got tied up by the Lilliputians?
Oh, that's right. Gulliver's Travels. He's going to be like Gulliver. He's going to be Gulliver with the little tiny people throwing little spears at him all day, hit him in the nose. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd hear Gulliver's Travels and Trump in the same conversation.
Gulliver Trump. Yeah, Gulliver Trump. Yeah, so I think, or health reasons, or something else. So, and then it gets interesting about who inherits that mantle, or does the party go in a different direction? Lots of possibilities there. So I just think we're going to get something different in 2024.
About the party in general. I already know what I think the Republican Party has become, I guess I should say. I think it's the FU party. I think that's all it is. It's kind of just FU, right? Whoever you can say FU to, that's cool. And I think that was even happening. I think Trump just made it go faster. But in the state of Texas or Georgia, wherever these things are happening, they're certainly happening here in Texas with essentially making voting less user friendly, right? That's what these laws are in Georgia. That's what the laws are going to be in Texas. You want to make it less convenient, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the pushback by corporations, which is a whole discussion, fascinating discussion by itself. Are CEOs the ones driving this, or are these 20 and 30 something employees driving this sort of righteous move by these companies? But either way, to think in our lifetime, the Republican Party would be, and you can correct me if you don't think this is the way it's playing out, the popular position for the Republican Party is FU to big corporations.
Yeah, it's
is that right? I mean, it seems like the popular play is to say we don't need them anyway. We don't like you're all a bunch of liberal fill in the blank anyway. I mean, to think that Dell, American Airlines, Southwest Airlines go down the list that pushes back and says, we don't like where this is going, and they're still able to say FU without any repercussions is pretty monumental for the Republican Party.
Well, it is, but there's going to be real consequences now because those corporations are actually stepping up and saying, "Okay, we're cutting off the funding," and they're doing it to a larger and greater extent than I ever imagined possible this quickly. And that's hitting them where they hurt. That's hitting them in the pocketbooks and their reelections, which is all they really care about. The thing that strikes me, Jeff, is that a lot of this is just Republican frustration and not being able to hit their target with Biden. Biden's just, it's just, Uncle Joe. People like him generally. They don't see him as threatening.
Yeah.
They don't see him as, this ideological enemy that the Republicans want him to be. People just, they have a sense of who he really is. And he's just not that demon so Republicans have to kind of find out, and not only him, but his policies generally. And the problem is that that Republicans, because of Trump, can't say, or they're going to try and say, oh, spending, debt. Well, that's what Trump did. I mean, Trump tripled the debt and said that he loved debt. And so it's just more difficult to make the sort of policy arguments that they used to make. So it comes back to cancel culture, right? When they can't find a policy argument, it's all about Dr. Seuss, Mr. Potato Head, and hamburgers. And by the way, victimization is kind of to your point. It's like, oh, woe is us.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's going to be the bell that they ring, but it seems insubstantial. And it doesn't seem like there's any real vision for the future of the party. That's what struck me about Tim Scott's response to the speech. It was fine, but there was no big, where's this party going other than to be, as you said, just the FU.
It's just
party.
the FU party. I mean, that may be enough. I don't know.
I think it may be enough for 2022. I don't think it's enough for 2024.
Okay.
And unless the Republican Party can reinvent a vision, I'm not sure I'll see another Republican.
Is that you said that the corporations are cutting them off? Because I know initially, certainly here in the state of Texas, when the CEO of American Airlines comes out, Dan Patrick jumps up, you don't share the same values or whatever kind of BS he threw out there. Just, again, kind of an FU statement. But a lot of people did respond, and I didn't know how to respond to them and said, yeah. It's nice for Michael Dell to say this. It's nice for American Airlines to say this. It's nice for Coca-Cola to say we're in favor of greater access to voting. That's like saying I'm in favor of reading. I mean, who isn't in favor of that? What are they really doing? Are you saying behind the scenes they're actually really pushing back? They're cutting them off?
Yeah. I mean, there's I can't give you kind of all the details on it, but I know that from reporting that I've read that a significant number of corporations are cutting off their funding to Republican candidates.
So Father's Day is coming up. You're doing the gift boxes.
Yep.
So here's something that's certainly not a tie or a sweater or a pair of socks. Not a bad idea.
Well, I think it's great if you don't know what to get your dad. I mean, get him some hot sauce. That way he can prove how much of a man he is, right? And this hot sauce will go great, and your dad will love it. So I think it makes a great gift box. You can go to our website and find those there. It come in packs of 4. It's a great box you just give to your dad and say, listen, here, Dad, thanks for being my dad. And it's not that sock that's just going to go in a drawer. It's not that gift card that's going to go in a wallet, never be used again. It's actually something he can share with his friends. And so I think it's a great idea.
All right, order a box now. It's atxhotsauce.com, atxhotsauce.com. Because I think people that are in the know, that are rightly skeptical and cynical, and I know I even had messages of people saying this, that, this is like Zuckerberg talking out of both sides of his mouth. Turns out that Facebook had been donating to both parties. And so I think that there's a level of informed American out there that says, they're no different than politicians. They're not doing anything about it either. Is that legit? I'm talking about corporations.
I think skepticism and cynicism is certainly warranted. But I have been surprised, and I've been around long enough to be more cynical than most. I was surprised at the number of corporations who stepped up and put their name on the list on some of this voting rights stuff. Big name Fortune 100 corporations that were really making a statement. So I think that there has been a shift, and they are responding. And I don't know if, to your question, are they responding to their 30-something employees or their audience, their consumers, or is it I don't think it's a sudden shift of mind of the CEOs. I think they're responding to the market.
Yeah, I wondered that. I mean, it's just kind of a funny transformation in our lifetime that, and I think this is fairly recent, and that is that to think that corporate America would be viewed as sort of this righteous, moral placeholder nowadays. But it is true. They're the ones pushing the envelope on a lot of these. I assume it's because of the employees more so the CEOs. But either way, I mean, it's a pretty amazing turn of events that they're the ones pushing the envelope on social issues. Yeah.
And this is why, the Republican is increasing their responses to just push this cancel culture, woke culture, cultural arguments, right? And that's where I think that, they're going to get some traction there. I mean, there's going to be, don't watch baseball, don't watch the NBA, that sort of thing.
But if they keep it up, I mean, sort of just simple marketing tells you the old angry, rural, pissed off white guy is going to die off. And what are you going to be left with?
Well, that's what I was saying earlier.
It seems like a short term. And I heard this. I've heard this in talk radio. Well, yeah. We're all one way, and yes, the audience is aging, and yes, it's becoming more rural. And then the answer is, then you're going to become Sears. Is the Republican Party going to become Sears?
Yeah, I may steal that from you, Jeff.
Okay.
Steal some of that material from you.
Please.
They are in a demographic cul-de-sac. There are not enough new voters to keep winning elections. I mean, Trump went to that well and dug about as far as you could go. But the number of, older white rural voters is a shallow pool. And the place where the dam is filling up is with younger, diverse voters.
Right. And
unless you've got a message and a strategy to attract them, I don't see the future.
Is there one? I mean, is there? I mean, so if Trump's not, if Trump exits stage left, however he exits, right, last minute, makes up an excuse, does the typical Trump thing. Is there somebody that can seize that mantle and say, you know what, it's time not to be Sears. It's time to be more like Target and less like Sears. Does that candidate exist, and what would they face? Is that The Rock or whatever his name is?
It would take something like that. The problem is that Trump is killing the Republican Party, and they can't live with him and they can't live without him. And as long as, that's why I think McConnell initially tried to take him out.
Yeah.
But he was unsuccessful. And, so I think it's likely, everybody is still kissing the ring. Anybody interested in a Republican primary has to get Trump's endorsement. And so you can't win a Republican primary without Trump, and I don't think you can win a general election with him.
Yeah.
So I think he's the death of the Republican Party for the near future. And we'll see the people who step out like Liz Cheney, are paying a heavy price, and she's getting primaried in Wyoming, and, we'll see what happens, but she could lose her race there.
Yeah, that's why I keep saying it's Sears. I'm sure some manager at Sears somewhere, if they're even still open, is saying, this is all I got, right? I mean, it's all we know how to do.
Yeah. We only sell polyester.
Yeah, exactly. The tough skin jeans with the knee patches. Where that's all we have left. It'd be a mistake if I didn't ask you. So the polling data says that Matthew McConaughey leads Greg Abbott by 12 points. And you say?
I say, well, just wait until he has to actually take a position on something. Listen, it's not impossible. I love that McConaughey has great passion. He's obviously an enormously talented individual. I think he's, soaked in Texas DNA and bleeds orange and I think he genuinely cares about the future of the country and the future of the state of Texas. But politics is hard as hell. And the minute that he's got to take a hard position, a clear position on things like immigration,
right?
What is he? Is he a Democrat? Is he a Republican?
I'm wondering. I'm trying to figure out who wants to cut him off at the knees more. I would assume it's Democrats. I mean, if you're Team Beto O'Rourke and you're consulting Beto O'Rourke, you're saying, well, make a call, let's be nice. But when he says, no, I'm in, we're going to have to cut him off at the knees, right?
Well, they won't if they think he can win, and they think he can win as a Democrat.
Okay. So is the 12 point, is that polling right now, does it matter at all?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really.
So the litmus test is Democrats are saying, is the guy really going to run? And could he really win? And what if the answer is to yes to both? You bring him in?
Then they'll do everything they can to get him to run. Yeah. And they'll throw Beto under the bus in a heartbeat.
Okay, but the flip side to me is even more interesting. Because we don't know what...
The problem is that part of that 55% is a lot of independents and Republicans thinking that McConaughey is more conservative than maybe he is.
Yeah.
Or the flip side.
He can't be a Republican, can he? I mean, he couldn't run as a Republican because it seems to me he's got a couple things. You know this well. He went to UT. That's the devil to 90% of rural Texas, right? That's the devil. It might as well be, and he's from Hollywood. Yeah. Done, end of story, right?
Yeah. Hollywood, UT Hollywood.
Yeah, it doesn't get any worse. I mean, you might as well be a communist.
Exactly right. So it's hard to see how he could run as a Republican. But again, I think part of that 55% are a lot of independents and Republicans who think he's more conservative than he is, or would have to be to run as a Democrat.
Could he get enough? I'm not going to say ego. Can he care enough, be passionate enough to say, yeah, I heard this McKinnon guy knows his stuff, and I'm not going to be either one of those things. I'm just going to run. I'm just going to be an independent, and I'm going to do whatever that thing he keeps saying. Politics is a broken business. I'm going to be the kumbaya candidate. Could he win that way?
Well, listen. I've seen there's a lot of collateral damage on the side of the road of people who've tried it before. The problem is, again, it's easy to say it's broken, but it's a lot harder to say here's how you fix it, and that requires taking hard positions on tough policy issues that are going to piss off 50% of the people, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And, it's great to say politics is broken. Everybody's going to agree with that.
Yeah, I know. That's all he ever says. I mean, he must say it 100 times a day. Broken business. Why
would you screw up a great life?
Yeah, I think it'd be insane. I can't believe his family is even tolerating this. But to be honest, it started off, I made fun of it and said, oh, yeah, right, whatever. And then he fought back, and it was some Dallas, knuckleheaded talk show host. And he said, I'm not going there. Well, a week later, he kind of went there. Another week later, he kind of went there more. And then you can sort of follow this path of whether it's ego or a real sincerity of this guy ending up saying, I'm not saying no.
Well, yeah, I don't know if you've read his book or his podcast, but I think it's called Green Light, something like that. But yeah, he is built that way. I mean, it is that kind of ego and passion that could meet the moment and just say, I know all the obstacles. I know people haven't done it before, but that's kind of my whole life's been like that. I met barriers, and I just said, I'm kind of here to do something different, and I'm going to go do it. Screw the conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, that's what Donald Trump did. Worked for him.
Yeah, no, in a lot of ways, it's weird. I said the kumbaya candidate. That's kind of his deal, right? I mean, so Trump was the FU candidate. McConaughey's the kumbaya candidate. But what example is there like that? I mean, I know people say Jesse Ventura and stuff like that. Ventura was fairly political. At least he took positions. I think Ventura got elected on fighting off stadium issues or something like that.
Yeah, well, Ventura was the first thing that came to my mind. Listen, I mean, politics is always people. We look at conventional wisdom in history, but it's people who break those bounds and do something differently that, like Trump did or like Ventura did. So it's hard for me to say, in 2022, what's going to work in Texas. It's going to be the person who kind of reimagines the future. And maybe that's McConaughey.
Does Greg Abbott care?
I mean, he should. I'm sure he's being practical about it. His advisors are kind of saying the same thing we are, that, when it comes down to the lick log, as they say in Texas, that, he's just not going to pull the trigger because there's too many obstacles. And once he starts taking positions, this equation is going to change dramatically. And, in some ways they could hope for McConaughey over O'Rourke just because O'Rourke,
Yeah, he sort of silences Beto O'Rourke, doesn't he? A little bit in the noise. Yeah.
Exactly.
So is Abbott running for governor again?
Yeah.
He doesn't act like it. He acts like he wants to be president.
Well, I think he runs for governor and then he runs for president.
Okay. Can he be the next president?
I don't think so.
Why?
I just, Abbott is, he's a guy who I think, he's been practical and you kind of see the arc of his career. But every time I see him kind of trying to throw bombs, it never seems authentic.
It doesn't. Exactly.
It seems like somebody told him to do it.
It's exactly my reaction. Is it just feels forced. You know, him trying to be the FU guy. There's not many people that can do FU, right?
Yeah, and I mean,
only
just don't think
Trump
it's,
just
I
his
don't
whole
think
life
that's
is
his
FU.
real nature. I don't think that's his real nature.
Yeah.
And it's not the nature of the guy that I knew, 20 years ago.
Yeah, he's acted like a jackass the last few months. I mean, really,
but it doesn't
work. It doesn't work. It's just that stupid news conference that he did at the Mexican food restaurant in Lubbock, and it just, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a good place for him.
Yeah, the clothes don't fit.
Yeah, well said. All right, man. As always, good talking to you. Good seeing you. I look like Shrek, of course, so this is new territory for me.
Hey, kick it hard. Carry on regardless.
All right, man. See ya.
See ya.